guys, today I want to do a video on how to winterize your Basecamp using a very simple and chemical-free way. If you listen to any of the Ask an Airstreamer forums, most of the Airstream service departments use this method to winterize all the Airstreams. Now, if you live in an extremely cold environment, like up in the northern region of the United States, you're probably going to want to use antifreeze throughout your water system, and I'll show you how you can do that. However, down in southern Oklahoma, where our winters are a little bit more mild, you can get away with just basically pressurizing the water system and pushing the water out of the pipes. Let me show you how to do that. Take you less than a half an hour. So in order to use this method, there's a few things you're going to need. One is a bottle of antifreeze, and that's just going to be for your P-traps and your gray and black water tank to make sure that any residual water that's pooling inside doesn't freeze over. You're going to need a bucket, and you're going to need an air compressor. In addition, you're going to need this air to garden hose fitting, which you can pick up on Amazon for about 15 bucks. Optimally, you'll get one with a shutoff valve like this so that you can shut this off when you're not using it. And then in my case, I don't have electric where I'm doing my winterization, so I brought a generator. So it's cold inside, or it's cold, so it's cold outside. So let's go inside and tackle this project. The first thing you're going to want to do to winterize the Basecamp is drain the hot water heater. The reason you're going to do this is because in the subsequent steps, we're actually going to isolate the water heater. It's not recommended to put any air pressure or antifreeze through the water heater. So whichever method you're going to use, make sure you shut off the valves to the water heater. Now, if you're unfamiliar of where to find the water heater, it's on the roadside or driver's side bench of the Basecamp. Right here. The next step, as I mentioned earlier, is you want to bypass the water heater to ensure that none of the air pressure that you're going to be pushing through these lines goes through the heater and damages it. In order to do that, you've got your hot line right here, the red pipe, and below that, running parallel, is your cold line. Plumbing 101, when you've got a ball stop, if it's running parallel with the pipe, that means it's open. And if it's perpendicular, that means it's closed. So that's what you want to do. You want to isolate the hot by turning the top one perpendicular. And hopefully you can see it, but you're going to have to reach down. You're going to shut off the cold as well. And then this one in the middle is a mixing valve. Under normal operation, you see this is perpendicular, meaning this is closed off. This prevents your hot and your cold from mixing after it's gone through the system. Otherwise, you're just going to have cold water. When you're winterizing, we're going to want to open this up to allow the air to go through and mix with the hot and the cold lines. Now, in the newer models of the Airstreams, I'm sure 21 and above, it may also be present on the 20s, but you've got this hose inside the compartment. Now, what this is built to do is you'll take the black tip off this hose, and you'll put this into the hose in a bucket with the antifreeze solution. And then down here, you would turn this on by turning it parallel with the pipe. That, with the water pump on, will suck that mixture through all the pipes, and then you go to each faucet or shower head, the toilet, etc. You turn each on until you can see that antifreeze running through the lines. Again, we're going to go with the chemical-free option, but this is a great tool to have. So we're going to shut that off. And then in order to access, if you can see down here, that red knob right there is the drain for the water heater. Now there's a metal plate that goes over that. And to access that, you're going to have to remove this panel here. So using a standard drill with a Phillips bit, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws that you're going to need to remove. You can see that the water heater is open, and that's because I've previously removed this panel right here. Which sits just like this. And then it screws in at the top with 2 screws. This is what I was referring to earlier. This is a red dial. And in order to drain it, you want to turn this clockwise. But before we do that, we're going to have to turn on the water pump. So make sure you've got power to your Basecamp, whether that's through shore power or your batteries. And you're going to hear the system charging. And then in order to drain it, we're going to turn this dial clockwise. And there's 2 hoses that run right behind the low water point drains, and that's where that water drains from. So once you've cycled a few times on turning it on and turning it off, basically you're just going to get air through these hoses here. So you'll be able to tell when all the water's out. So at that point, make sure this is closed by turning that clockwise until it stops. And then you can replace the panel here. You'll need a Phillips head screwdriver. The panel's back on. You can replace this panel. And so what I like to do, this is just my practice, is obviously you've got a side to this panel that matches the trim on the outside. That's how you know which direction to put it. When I'm done winterizing, I actually turn it around so that the white is mismatched. And that's, again, just an internal reminder that it is winterized and that I don't have to do that step again. And then I'm just going to drill the panel back in. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to charge up my compressor. So I'll plug it into the generator. I'll turn it on to make sure it builds up enough internal air pressure. And then you're going to want one with a pressure regulator so that you can set the output of the unit. Now, the water pipes or the water system for the Basecamp for your city water is self-regulated. Airstream installs I believe it's a 50 psi water regulator, but you want to make sure that you're not pushing out more than about 35 psi on this is what's recommended. First one we're going to pressurize is the black water flush right here. So there actually should be enough pressure in the tank. So we're going to open up the valve. You can hear this. And you can hear the water, or you can hear the air pressure coming out in the black tank. So So again, we'll run this just long enough so that we're comfortable that all the water's out. And then we'll shut it off, and then we're gonna have to charge it back up. Now that the black tank flush is done, I've moved it to the city water in. So we'll turn the compressor back on. All right, back inside the Basecamp, we'll open up our faucet. And you want to keep that going until it's strictly air. So you'll feel it. I can still feel little water droplets. That's the cold. Switch it to hot. You're going to want to repeat that process a few more times, hot and cold, until you can feel that there's no more water coming out of the faucet. So we'll move over to the bathroom, turn on the water here. And as you can see, I already removed the shower head, which is plastic. And if you leave that on and there's any water in it, it's going to crack. Okay, same thing with this. You're going to want to toggle it both hot and cold water a couple more times until you're comfortable that the water's out. Don't forget the toilet. All right, so I'm going to do that exact process all over again a few more times. All right, now that the inside's done, we still have one water system that we need to clear, and that's the outside shower. So now that we're done pressurizing the lines and all the water's out, you're going to want to check your low point drains one more time and your fresh water tank to make sure all the water's out of there. And what I'll do is I'll just leave that open for a little while, just to let the air get in there while I check the rest of the Basecamp. So we've winterized our shower, took the shower head off since it's plastic and it'll also crack. Closed up all my fittings. I'll check the tire pressure to make sure they're topped off. We'll close up our black tank and our gray tank. If you're storing this for the winter, it's always a good idea to put a little dielectric grease right here in order to avoid corrosion. Now, the last part of this is we are going to have to use a little bit of antifreeze for any of the P-traps or anywhere where the water is going to pool in any areas. So this is RV and marine antifreeze, so it's not toxic like car antifreeze. However, we're not introducing this to our fresh or city water system. We're simply putting it in the sink, in the toilet, in the shower pan, just to make sure there's a little bit of antifreeze in the black and gray tanks, as well as the P-trap underneath the sink where water's just going to hang out. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out a way to remove this thing to make this process easier, so if you know how to do that, please leave a note in the comments. Again, just enough to make sure we've got some in the P-trap. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the toilet, pour a little bit down there into the black tank. And then finally, a little bit down into the shower pan. While I'm in the bathroom, I'm just going to verify that the vent's closed. Close up our toilet. Come over to the fan, make sure that's closed all the way, nice and tight. I've got all my window shades up, my refrigerator off and propped open so that I can air out. All right, so now that we're all buttoned up, just a few last steps. So make sure you've got a dehumidifier, even over the winter and when you're not occupying it. The last thing is remove anything you don't want to freeze or go bad during storage. Recommend removing all your batteries from any of your electronic devices, or else you'll end up with a situation like this. This is just a lantern that got kind of pushed to the back. We forgot about it, and the batteries got ruined. So we'll take all this stuff out, bring it back to the house, and that's it. So if I wasn't filming, that whole process probably would have taken about 20 to 30 minutes. It's a lot easier in warmer climates or regions that aren't going to have a really harsh winter. So if you live up north, talk to your Airstream service department, do what they recommend. I know Airstream of DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, they use the air compressor method. It works for us down here, and I'll make sure I do a dewinterization or commissioning for the spring as a follow-up to this video. If you have any questions, again, please put that in the comments. Like the video if you like the content I'm putting out. If you've got any other questions about anything related to the Basecamp, comment below. Thanks again.